Hi, welcome to another edition of Commander Runningcloud's log. Now, I call this under exopolitical diplomacy. Exopolitical is a term that I use that was popularized by Michael Salla, the founder of the Exopolitical Journal and one of the YouTube stars that I follow since I found him, since he was became a part of my routine. You know, I sort of have a routine on YouTube, people that I follow, and I know that you probably remember that when I was giving up on so much of what's going on here in this reality in America and the world, I was really happy to find that Star Trek is real and that they actually get to the point where they will be inviting Earthians in to be part of the organization. At least that's what Michael Salla says. Now, you know, when the PhDs get involved, like Michael Salla and Courtney Brown, you really have to give everything a whole new level of credibility. And let's not forget Stephen Greer, who really has worked hard for many, many years to pull together the proof that what we have thought of as reality is really much, much bigger than what we thought. So in this new, bigger reality, I found a room to grow. I found hope that makes me want to move forward. And that's why I created this series, Exopolitical Diplomacy, where I try to raise questions and issues that a person would have if they're integrating our society into an intergalactic world of societies. So I've tried to find, you know, the major topics about living and life and philosophy and the meaning of life and what's important. And I've also tried to address concerns that Earthians from my time might have about the world we'll be living in tomorrow if my dreams come true. So I've already, you know, said I'm strongly interested in being a Star Trek time traveler. And the proof that this is a real thing that can happen is coming clearer and clearer and clearer. It comes in clearer and clearer and clearer from more and more different sources. Because I've had this dream, this inclination since the 1980s. But it just seemed like a fantasy that I was going to write in science fiction, not anything that could actually happen. But as the walls of evil have fallen all around me, I found myself cornered here in this Houston hotel where a criminal burnt my face and they shoot projectiles and put nanobots in my ear, where things that are happening to me that are so far out on the fringe that why can't the good things on the fringe also be a part of the reality I'm living in? I think it's very important for me to repeat that I am a singularity. I do not occur in multiple timelines. As the timelines converge, they converge into the timeline that I am living in. And there are not multiples of me coexisting with me, although there are spirals of time. But Well, I guess that doesn't make any sense, does it? It's confusing. It's very hard for me to conceptualize some of the things that are going on. Let me put it this way. I've had these moments of deja vu that haven't happened for many years now. And in these moments, I became aware that as time travelers refine the reality of the future, they make mistakes. And these mistakes can lead to a conclusive end, but it doesn't end me or myself. It's as if these echoes, these other timelines of me that become closed and condensed, I become aware of them at their junction, at their termination point, at the terminus. So I've had moments happen to me where I was told, this is where it all blew up in our faces the last time we came this way. And this is what you did wrong. And the biggest problem was me and my big mouth. You see, because I'm a broadcaster, that's one of my functions is to broadcast. So sometimes I would tip our hand and the enemy would catch on to what we were doing, what we were thinking, what we were planning, and then we'd be sabotaged, and that would lead to our destruction. And then that timeline would collapse into this timeline. Okay, I'm understanding it better. So if you imagine it, that when the timelines collapse, they collapse into this one. That's the best way to explain my identity as a singularity. If you are here and able to perceive me, you too are a singularity, because this is our first time coming through. This is our first time coming through. So even if there's a you in the future, this is your first time coming through. You're not an iteration, because all of those timelines have condensed. And this is the only one, because this is the singularity. And I am a singularity. I do not reoccur in other timelines. I do not coexist in parallel dimensions. This is the only place where I exist. And since we've never come this far before in beating our enemies at this war, we've never come this far before. So for me, no more timelines have been condensing. And that's been for quite a while now. And when the last one condensed, they actually said, this is the last one. Once we get through here, we win. It's just getting through. It's just clear sailing from now on. One way that this came to me graphically in the early 2000s, 2005 or 6 maybe 2004 or 5, the way that it came to me graphically was very similar to a picture I later saw on an album by Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd, one of those two guys. I get them confused. But it's an album where there's a straight beam of white light that goes into a prism, and then it breaks out into a spectrum of light. The way that time was shown to me, the time that I'm in and my position in ultimate time, was that I was moving towards this point where there'd be an intersection. And at this intersection of light, the next reality would emerge. Okay, so here we were moving forward like that beam of light in the Led Zeppelin album. And then when you hit the prism, that's when everything gets sorted out. So it was really funny because I saw that picture in my mind, and then I saw that album cover and I said, wow. But I have to admit that I'd probably seen that album cover a long, long time ago. But still, that was the picture that was put into my mind in the 2000s of where we are in time and how you might look at it, that we are in a trajectory. But once we hit the prism, things are going to break out differently. And once we get on the other side of the prism, we're in the next timeline. And I'm a singularity. I feel a little funny explaining things like that, but I've gotten so many confirmations for these weird thoughts I have lately that it can't hurt. It might help somebody. You might notice that in my posts, I've been taking a retroactive through some of my work on your college course. I'll go through Logical 4. I was actually just looking for some of my meditative videos, which I think are on Logical 4, at Logical 4. But then I ran into all these things with Sue Ann Dicker. And that just reminded me, I did a post earlier today that would show Marcus Smith. And when I saw Marcus Smith, I see him kind of often when I look out of the window. Because although he damaged my face and put the nanobot on my bed, he's still walking around free and I'm still injured and suffering. So I always feel really bad when I see him. But then I very quickly forget it because I don't hold grudges. And I just he's really not that much a part of my world. It's just what he did to me. It was really funny the day that he planted the nanobot here. He was sitting in a chair I had to set up like a little office where I was trying to train people in one of my training programs for the International Ladies Chamber of Commerce. I was doing a copywriting training program, but they were just ripping me off. And one day he came, because Marcus also sold me weed. When I say weed, I don't mean marijuana. It's hemp, and it's a hemp very similar to the genetically modified Delta 8 and Delta 10 hemp that they legally sell in Houston, Texas stores. And hemp is not marijuana. Now, I first smoked marijuana at the Bishop Strawn School in Toronto with the young heiresses, the young European heiresses that were going to private boarding school, live-in private boarding school. Well, boarding school means live-in, but we lived there. And there were two girls. One was named Joanne. I can't remember the other girl's name, but they had a liquor cabinet in their room. And the house mothers knew about it, too. And they used to tease the house mother because she used to get drunk on the field trips and flirt with the bus drivers. Because we were all, locked in a private boarding school for girls there in Toronto. But one day, Joanne and the other girl wanted to show off a little of their privilege to me, I guess. I don't know exactly what they were up to. But they were scheming on me, the two of them. And so they took me to the mall with them. And we went to a store called The Bay, the Hudson Bay Company. And it was in the London Street Mall there, which wasn't that far from the boarding school. And I remembered they knew I was poor, that I only had like 2 outfits besides my uniform. And so they knew I was poor. And I think they just wanted to really show off. So they took me to the mall with them where they went shopping and they actually bought things. And Joanne bought a blazer that costed $65. Now in 1972, a $65 blazer was super expensive. It was camel colored. Didn't even look special or that good on her. But it costed a lot of money. And I remember she just had an envelope and a stamp. And she put the receipt in an envelope and mailed it to her parents. And I said, aren't you going to put a thank you note in there? She said, no, they just need the receipts. That's really funny because Juan Luis Hernandez, who also had rich European parents, he had a thing about receipts. He loved receipts. He loved saving receipts, collecting receipts, because of the tax advantages of receipts. But the first time I saw, one of my peers with receipts was this Joanne from the Bishop Strawn School. So on the way home, we're walking a little bit and we see a bar. Wait a minute. No. So we're walking home. We took the bus there. But Joanne and the other girl decide we're going to hitchhike back to the school. So they hitchhike and we get a ride. And the guy was driving a car that wasn't even available in the United States. It was a little campy kind of car called a Citroen. And when I put my feet down on the back seat, my feet sort of sunk in. And they said the floor of the back seat was made of silicone, was what they said. So that's the first time I heard about silicone in as a building material. So we're sitting in this car with these guys, and they know we're just high school girls, but they break out some marijuana. And Joanne and the other girl said they already knew what marijuana was when he asked them, do you want some marijuana or weed or dope? I'm not sure what we called it there and then. And they said yes. Now, I skipped a grade. So most people in my grades were 1 to 2 years older than me because I'm a summer birthday and I skipped a grade. So these girls were both 2 years older than me, like my friends in Saskatoon had been, who taught me how to drink. The first time I got drunk on beer, I think I was 13. And I got drunk because my older friend Lita Atkinson, whose father was the president of the Saskatchewan Farmers Association. He was the president of the National Farmers Association, and he got so much land and crops to Europe that Ireland itself gave Mr. Atkinson some kind of royal designation award. I remember when he died, I sent Lita a bird song. A bird had sung all night long, and I sent her the bird song. And she just kind of stopped talking to me. And that's when I knew that she and her father had betrayed me, because when I expressed sorrow and grief over his dying, because they had let me live with them when I ran away from home several times, the way she ignored me when he died let me know that her father didn't have respect for me or like me very much. And that when her family called my family to say if we continue to take Silver Rain Runningcloud into our home, we're going to go to child welfare so we can get money and adopt her as a foster kid. And my mother made me walk home. I think my stepfather had the car. And I had to walk home from the Atkinson's house because Mrs. Atkinson said that my mother said she wasn't allowed to give me a ride home. And it was the dead of winter. And I had to walk through snow that was up to my knees in places. And I remember crossing the schoolyard to Walter Murray Collegiate Institute, passing the baseball diamond covered with snow up to my knees, passing the hockey rink for junior varsity and varsity with snow up to my knees. And I remember getting halfway through this big field of snow after I'd already walked a long distance to get to the school field shortcut. And I remember wanting to just sit down and take a little nap in the snow. And I could almost see myself sleeping in the snow. And I said, oh my God, I'll die of what they call consumption. Because one of the first things that the other high school kids taught me, Lita Atkinson, and the other Europeans in Canada taught me, was that people actually die from exposure during the winter time of the year. That you could actually die from exposure if you weren't careful. But they called it consumption, which is what we called tuberculosis in olden days of America. But they called freezing to death consumption among my high school peers. So I said, gee, if I go to sleep in the snow, I'm never going to wake up again. I don't think I should do that. I must have been about 14. So that's where I said, even though I'm so tired and I'm only halfway across this field of snow, I can't stop and go to sleep. I can't stop and take a nap. I have to keep walking. Well, I learned subsequent to that the desire to sleep is a part of you dying of cold. That a lot of people who die of cold fall asleep first. So I really felt close to death in that field. I really felt very close to death in that field. I can still see the scene, actually, in my mind. But once I realized that I could die there, I just got a second wind and pushed on through and made it home and never ran away from home again. So I learned my lesson. That you can't live with strangers. You can't live with other people. And that even if you don't get along with your mother is your best bet for surviving. That's what I learned from that. But there must have been a lot of home conversation about it from Lita's father, judging by her reactions to my joining them in their mourning their father. When I joined her mourning her father, she rejected me. You know, I've learned so much from when people will not accept a kindness from you. Because whenever people will not accept a kindness from me, it's because they have a guilty conscience or no conscience at all, but they know they did something that would disqualify them from being the beneficiary of my kindness. Anyway, Lita Atkinson taught me how to drink beer. Now, it sounds like I'm off the point of crime, but I'm kind of getting into it right now. Because the overriding question that I was asking, seeing Marcus and seeing him walking around free, knowing he has a home to go to that he describes as a luxury home, knowing that he does some baby prostitute pimping here, knowing that his money comes from being a psychopath in his behavior. I'm not saying he's a psychopath because I don't know for sure. I just know that the day that he planted the nanobot in my room, he sat in a chair right there and cried like a little bitch and said, "But I'm a black man." Okay? And he did it because I was saying, "Hey, listen, Marcus, could you sell me some real marijuana instead of this hemp? This hemp is terrible. It stinks. It doesn't do much for me. Could you get me some real weed?" So he had decided that he was going to put the nanobot on my pillow. So he came in with this whole little packet and said, "This is all of the weed I have. I'm going to let you pick whatever you want because I'm not trying to cheat you. This is the marijuana." And so he spread it out all over my bed, which is when he planted the worm and made sure that it got towards my pillow because he never touched my bed before. I mean, a strange man touching my bed, ew, ew. It wasn't going to happen.